Well, hello, and thanks for watching another episode of ARFCOM News, your twice-weekly dose of the finest 2A propaganda. You know how gun control groups are always trying to rebrand themselves as gun safety groups? Never mind that these Karens couldn't tell you the 4 rules if you promised them a lifetime supply of Franzia. They pretend to be about gun safety because gun control doesn't sell. But when it comes time to actually practice gun safety, they shoot holes in cars. The Maine Gun Safety Coalition tried to saw a loaded muzzleloader in half, causing it to discharge, damaging 2 nearby cars. I called up the Old Orchard Beach Police Department to find out if any laws had been broken, and it turns out discharging a firearm within city limit is illegal, but not if it's a muzzleloader. Obviously, it's also illegal to shoot holes in people's cars, but only if the owner chooses to press charges. So while I'm not normally the kind of guy to advocate for new gun control laws, I think maybe it's time we close the muzzleloader loophole in Old Orchard Beach, which allows control-free groups to blow holes in cars right in the middle of town without any repercussions whatsoever. If you agree, please call Old Orchard City Hall at 207-934-5714 and tell them to close the muzzleloader loophole. If you think I'm just being petty, maybe you're right, but it would be impossible for us to produce quality 2A propaganda without sponsors, so let's pay some bills.
Hey party people, Franklin Armory's binary firing system gives you double the pleasure for triple the fun. With Franklin's patented binary trigger, you get 2 shots with your semi-automatic cycle instead of just 1. It's available for ARs, AKs, and lots of other popular rifles and PCCs. They even have models for Glocks. Want reduced split times and tighter groups? With a Franklin Armory binary firing system, you can improve these important shooting metrics and more. Visit franklinarmory.com and gain the selectable option to fire on both the pull and release trigger functions of your semi-automatic firearm today.
And by TNVC.com, they just got a small batch of refurbished unfilmed white phosphor dual tubes made by L3. The Anvis Sportsman has a hot mount which delivers power from an external pack and automatically turns off and on as you raise and lower the goggles. They have a minimum figure of merit of $23.76 and they're in stock and ready to ship for $6,900. And by Hydra. The Mark 15 Hydra is the most versatile black rifle platform the industry has ever seen. The most you will ever need to convert calibers is a barrel, a bolt, and a magazine well. Matt Hoover and Chris Irvin got sentenced to over 5 years for having a picture of a machine gun part, and while I was researching stories for today's episode, I came across 3 actual criminals who got less time. Just last week alone. Andrew Blaze,
he distinctly said to Blaze,
was a drug dealer. Yeah, you heard that right. Blaze was a drug dealer who got caught with bundles of cash, 38 bags of fentanyl, and a loaded handgun he was prohibited from possessing due to a previous drug trafficking conviction. He got 4 years. Chrissy Williams was convicted of smuggling numerous firearms and parts to Trinidad and Tobago. She got 3 years. And maybe you're saying, well, sure, but these crimes aren't as serious. Well, I'd like to remind you that Hoover and Irvin never actually had a real machine gun. They never had a lightning link even. They had pieces of metal with a rough representation of a lightning link etched on them. Even if you were to cut the pieces out of the metal carefully following the lines, the dimensions were wrong and they would not function. They literally had a picture of a lightning link. And now you do too. But Michael Thomas of Lansing, Michigan did have an actual functioning loaded machine gun in the form of a Glock with a switch. And he was also out on bond for a carjacking charge when he posted pics on social media of him holding the gun. Considering he had previously been arrested with a stolen gun that also had an autosear attached to it, I don't think the cops had a whole lot of trouble getting a warrant. A violent and repeat offender like that should probably get more time than somebody who just had a picture of a lightning link, right?
nope.
Mr. Thomas got less than 4 years. My brothers, this guy carjacks people, gets caught twice with glizzy swizzies, and leaves evidence on his phone that he was trafficking in full auto Glocks, and he gets less time than some dude who had a picture of a machine gun part. Of course, that's not to say that he's just going to walk on the carjacking charge, but that's a state crime and has no bearing on the federal case. Still, this guy never should have been released in the first place. Cash bond for violent crimes should not exist. And no, that doesn't just mean we're gonna start releasing all of these sociopaths on OR. It means that if there is enough evidence to indict for a violent crime, you need to remain in custody until your trial. Can I get an amen?
So say we all.
Because we don't have a gun problem in the US. We have a releasing violent sociopaths problem. 80% of homicide victims are criminals, and 80% of homicide suspects have a prior felony conviction. All we have to do to cut murder by 80% is to stop letting these psychos out after we catch them. As always, links to my sources will be down there in the doobly-doo. You may have heard the Supremes ruled against Rahimi. That's the case deciding whether the government has the authority to deny gun rights to someone without a conviction. Now, don't get it twisted. Rahimi is absolute trash, a complete waste of oxygen, but it was wrong to deny his gun rights based on nothing more than an accusation. At the same time, this ruling could have caused more trouble if it had gone our way. Now, hear me out. It's one of those cases where there's a lot of nuance and the opposition can run circles around you claiming you support domestic violence. So I'm not happy that we lost, but I'm also not overly distraught. With all the other big news coming out of the courts last week, one ruling you might have missed was the injunction against the ATF for their engaged in the business rule. Those Fed boys seem to love losing as much as a fat kid loves cake. They lost on bump stocks, braces, and their ridiculous assertion that basically any transfer ever must go through a dealer. U.S. District Judge Matthew Kacsmack smacked the ATF with an injunction, but the feds can and likely will appeal. In the meantime, though, they cannot lock people up for selling a gun to a relative. The fact that they even want to try tells you everything you need to know about these scumbags. A company called Zero Eyes has scored a contract with the Las Vegas Transportation Commission to use its AI gun detection software to spy on transit centers. When I first heard about this, I expected it to be similar to the mix of sensors and software which allow casinos to identify armed personnel. But Nevada is a shell-issue state, and permit holders are allowed to carry on public transportation. Rather than a horrifying and audacious digital panopticon in public, this system is designed to detect a person brandishing a weapon and alert human observers who then make an assessment and notify police, if needed. Now, I'm still uncomfortable with the constant surveillance, but it's not nearly as offensive as it would be if they were trying to identify people for simply having a gun. What do you think? Are you still as creeped out by mass surveillance as I am, even if they are only watching for people threatening others? And now, for your moment of Zen. Hey friends, do you like pews and other pew-related things? Would you like to help us keep delivering you pure uncut American pew-paganda at the low, low price of $3.99? We literally couldn't pay the bills without our sponsors, so do us a solid and get yourself something nice from them. You deserve it. I love you.